morning, everybody. I am Sherry Eldridge. Most of you probably already know me because I know a few faces in here. I'm not going to tell you how I know you, but I do know some of you. Anyway, I work in employee relations, if you didn't know, and our division handles things such as policies. We're the stewards of the policies. We also do investigations, and we also recommend disciplines and do the disciplinary letters for your department. We usually work with your supervisors or director in those situations. Some of you have met me because I've had to bring you in to talk to you for an investigation that I've been doing. So that's how I know some of you. Anyway, you're probably asking, why do we need to be here for 2 hours for a mandatory standards of conduct training? Because we are not being mindful of how we're acting in the workplace, and that's why we're going to be here for 2 hours, to remind you about being professional in the workplace. Another reason is, for those of you that have been with the city for some time, you might know that every year you used to have an annual policy review where you signed acknowledgement forms every year, right? Remember that? We got away from that. Kind of got redundant. Well, now we're thinking maybe out of sight, out of mind, and we're forgetting about those policies. We're starting to see an increase in human resources for discrimination, sexual harassment, and harassment. And again, we're thinking it's because we forget about the policies, and also because things are changing in our community, right? There's things that are happening out in our community that now we're bringing into the workplace, and it may not be appropriate. So we're going to talk about a few of those things. You heard me mention earlier that we're going to have this portion filmed for those folks that aren't able to attend because they've been out sick or something of that nature. So I am going to ask you, because of that, if you have cell phones on, put them in vibrate mode. And also, too, if you have any questions, I will give a break up on the hour. And then also at the end of this presentation, you'll get an opportunity to ask questions. So I ask that you hold them until then so that we don't get off topic and we don't get off time. Okay? All right, let's begin. Here's our agenda for today. Employee conduct, fraud awareness, discrimination and harassment, workplace safety, maintaining our professionalism, and then, of course, the additional resources in the Q&A. Employee conduct. Your Human Resources Policy Manual states every decision of every employee is expected to be ethical, prudent, and make common sense. Good judgment, truthfulness, and professionalism consistent with commonly accepted employment practices are required from all employees in all aspects of their work at all times. Employees are responsible for conducting themselves in a professional and ethical manner and treating coworkers and members of the public with respect and dignity at all times. What do you hear me emphasize? At all times. We forget about that. For example, when we're out and about in the community, and even though we may be at lunch, you have shirts on that usually identify you're a city employee, or that you have a badge that says you're a city employee, correct? Okay, so even though you may be on your lunch hour and technically not on the clock, citizens don't know that. And so citizens call that 826 city phone number and report that you've been sitting at Stripes for 2 hours and things of that nature. And so those type of things come to human resources, and we need to investigate them to find out if they have merit or they don't have merit. But still be cautious, even if you're on your lunch hour or on a break period and you're out in the public, or just even in City Hall or wherever you were or working that day, at all times, because people are watching you, okay? How many of you know that we have a fraud hotline? And I'm saying fraud, not frog, like that commercial. I'm saying fraud. Raise your hand. Okay, some of you do. And most of us, because we work here in City Hall, which most of us do, probably are more aware of it than some people that don't work here at City Hall. But Sarah Arroyo is going to give us a little tidbit of what the auditor's office does. And then I'll tell you how we work together and why they're part of this presentation. So let's go to the video.
Hello everyone, my name is Sarah Arroyo and I'm with the City Auditor's Office here to talk to you about fraud prevention and awareness. In your packet, you should have received a fraud awareness and prevention pamphlet. Inside the pamphlet, you will see that there are some facts about fraud to know, some interesting facts also included in the fraud triangle, and some red flag indicators or characteristics in people's behavior to look out for. On the other side of the pamphlet, there will be some definitions of the different kinds of fraud. On the back of the pamphlet are the 5 different ways to contact us if you see any of these behaviors. The first is by phone at 826-TIPS or 8477. It is an automated phone service, so it's available 24 hours, 7 days a week. If you would like to just leave a message, you can push 0 and it'll take you straight to the voicemail. Your phone number is automatically not displayed, as if you want to stay anonymous, you can stay anonymous. The second way to contact us is by email at fraudhotline@cctexas.com. If you do send us an email through your personal email, your name will come out with the email. If you don't mind us knowing who you are, you can send it that way. However, if you want to stay anonymous, it's probably best that you send through the website. Go to www.cctexas.com/cityauditor. On the auditor page, the first page will discuss the office and the audits that we do. On the top of the page will be a link that says Report Fraud, Waste, or Abuse. If you click on that link, it'll take you straight to the fraud section of our page. On the fraud section, it will discuss the frauds and how to fill out a form. On the left side of the form, we'll see a layout as it is on the back of your pamphlet. Click on the computer screen, and it'll take you to the form that you can fill out to report the fraud. On the form, it'll ask you questions like what the fraud is, who is involved, supervisors, employee numbers, any kind of detailed information you may know. On the bottom, it'll ask you for your personal information or ask you if you would like to stay anonymous. If you would like to stay anonymous, click the anonymous box. You can also send it to us through mail, mailing it to 1201 Leopard Street, City Auditor's Office. You do not have to put fraud hotline. If you don't want anyone to know that this is a fraud allegation, do not put fraud hotline. It will go into the same box. Another option is going ahead and leaving your allegation here on the 6th floor at our tip box. This tip box here is located next to the vending machines. You just write your allegation and leave it inside the slip. When leaving an allegation, it is okay to stay anonymous. If you do decide to remain anonymous, please try to leave as much detail as possible so this helps our investigation. If you do decide to tell us your information when leaving an allegation, just know that your information is safe in our office and cannot be given to anyone who asks. If you do leave an allegation and want to know the progress of your allegation, you can call us at 826-3661. If you do call us, please remember to leave a password with your allegation so that if you call me and ask about the progress, I'll ask you what the password is and I can tell you where we are from that point on. So that is all I have for you today. If you have any questions or concerns, please call the auditor's office at 826-3661. Thank you.
Okay, just to tell you a little bit about how we work together. For example, there's some things that may start in human resources, meaning an investigation. And believe it or not, whether you know this or not, HR can't look into everything like most people think that we can. For example, when it comes to financial information, looking at P-card transactions or inventory that should be out at the departments, we don't have the authority to look into that information. So this is when I would call someone from the auditor's office, explain that my investigation has led me to here, and I need your assistance in this portion of it. And I'll give you an example. We had, not too long ago, maybe over a year ago, where I had an employee, or actually a former employee, come to Human Resources and was upset that they had been terminated. Now, typically in HR, we know who's going to be terminated for one, either because we had part in the investigation, or we helped draft the discipline, or we've been working with the supervisor or director on doing that. However, this person wasn't on my radar, so to speak. In other words, the name wasn't familiar to me. I know I hadn't done an investigation on this person. I certainly hadn't drafted any disciplinary paperwork for this person. So I was caught off guard. So I went back to my office just to make sure they were a city employee, because as you know, we also have human relations here. And if you're ever terminated from an entity or another company outside of the city, they can go down and make an EEO claim down in human relations. So sometimes we get them up in human resources. Anyway, I did find out that this person was an employee for one of our departments. And he proceeded to tell me that in addition to how he was terminated, that there was fraud going on in his department, and he was quite sure it was happening, and he wanted to tell me about it. I said, okay, since I had him in my office, instead of calling the auditor's office right then and there, made my notes, started taking information, he proceeded to tell me that there was a temporary that was working for, and I'll just say ABC Staffing Company. I don't remember the name of the staffing company, but working for the staffing company that supposedly was working in their department, but he's never seen them. He knows of them because this person was coming to their parties that they had outside of work, and this person apparently was receiving a paycheck from his ABC Staffing Company for supposedly hours he was working here at the city of Corpus Christi. So I took all that information down, did a little digging, as you do in an investigation, and come to find out, when I brought everyone in that supposedly this person should have been working with, everybody said the same thing. They had never seen him work a day at the city of Corpus Christi. But they did understand he worked for ABC Staffing Company, was getting a paycheck for apparently working at the city. In human resource terms, we call this a ghost employee, if you've heard that term. And how this works is some of you probably or may have started your career here with the city of Corpus Christi as a temporary. So you know how that kind of works. When you're a temporary, you're actually being paid by your staffing company. And then the city of Corpus Christi is billed your hours from that staffing company. So we had a city supervisor signing off on this temporary's timesheet that he would turn into his staffing company. You see where the fraud's coming in here? Well, what I didn't have access to, I was still able to establish that this person really wasn't working, but it was the auditor's office I had to call in to find out how much money we had paid this staffing company for this employee being billed his hours for hours he never really worked. And then it led into inventory issues, where this person had told us that there might be inventory that was purchased with City P cards at their personal home, in their personal storage unit. And of course, then you get CCPD involved, because now it could be criminal, right? And that's what ended up happening, is it became a criminal case. Obviously, that supervisor is no longer here, along with some other people that were implicated in that incident. So that is just kind of one way that things may start in human resources, but end up having to go to the auditor's office, or we work together. So that's why we wanted to bring the auditor's office video into this, so that you know there's different types of fraud. You also may be more comfortable coming and talking to me, since I know some of you personally and I see you on a regular basis because I work here at City Hall. Y'all may be more comfortable coming to tell me, but just so that you know, maybe there's a point where I have to get someone else involved because I don't have access and can't review certain things. So that's why they're part of our presentation. Let's go ahead and move forward. Now I'm going to talk to you about discrimination and retaliation. Now this is something that my division, Employee Relations, would handle. I'm going to tell you what the city says about discrimination and retaliation. It says the city prohibits discrimination in the promotion, transfer, compensation, terms, conditions, or privileges of employment on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, pregnancy, age, national origin, sexual orientation, gender, military status, citizenship, work-related injury or illness, disability, or genetic information. Whew, that's a mouthful, and it might be familiar to you because that's taken from the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Title VII. Now, back in 1964, you probably didn't hear things such as genetic information or sexual orientation. Those are things that have been added since then. For example, when I'm talking about discrimination, does anybody know what genetic information actually really means? If you do, just raise your hand. I'm not going to pick on anybody. Okay? Okay. Thank you. I love permission. Anyway, so let me give you an example. How many of you have ever sat on an interview panel? Raise your hand. Okay, a few of you. So let me give you a case law, an issue that happened not here in Texas, but to kind of give you an idea how maybe genetic information could be discriminatory. For example, there was a gentleman who applied for a position with a company, and he met the criteria as far as the job posting, was brought in and had an interview. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, they get that thanks but no thanks letter in the mail that he didn't get the position. He ended up suing the company that he applied for, saying that he didn't get the job because he believed that it was because of the genetic information that he shared during his interview process is why he didn't get the position. So the scenario is this. He went on his interview, and it was a panel interview. And one of the questions that the panel asked him was this. Looking at his resume, they said, you have had pretty steady work up until about a year ago. So can you explain your gap of employment? Some of us may have been asked that question at some point in our interview process, maybe not here with the city because those are scripted questions. And usually that's not something that's probably going to be on an approved list for questions for the city. However, this isn't the city. And so they asked the gentleman, could you explain your gap of employment for the year? He said, certainly. He said, I'm sick, I've been sick, I'm well now, and I'm ready to get back to work. I have been battling an illness called sickle cell anemia, have other family members that I am caretaker for. So I've been in and out of the hospital, so have they, but I've got everything under control now, and I'm ready to go back to work. Can you see how that information could be used against that person? And he believed it had been. That was the basis of his lawsuit. So, after an investigation had been conducted, come to find out the panel members did use that information. Their thought process was this. Well, if he's already been out a year for his illness and other family members' illness, if we hire him, is he going to be out? And if not for himself, for his family members? We really need someone in this position. We've already been without someone for some time. So we don't want to be back in that position. So that information was used to determine whether he was the best candidate or not. And therefore, judgment was given to him. Undisclosed, so I can't tell you how much. But anyway, that is how genetic information can be used against you. And sickle cell anemia is not the only genetic illness or disease. For example, you may have heard of Huntington's disease or hemophilia. Those are things, a genetic disease is something that's in your DNA. In other words, it could be passed down through your genes from family members. Okay? Moving forward, it says retaliation in any form against an employee for reporting a complaint in good faith or for assisting in the investigation of such a complaint is prohibited. Employees who experience discrimination or retaliation must report the violation to the department director, any assistant city manager, director of human resources, or to the city manager for investigation. No employee should assume that the city is aware of a problem. Employees must bring their complaints and concerns to the attention of management so appropriate steps can be taken. Remember, supervisors have the obligation to promote a harassment and retaliation-free workplace. Employees must cooperate and is required to participate in an investigation when required by the city or requested by the city. This is something that is near and dear to me, and I'll give you an example. I guess last year, the end of last year, I had a gentleman come to my office and say he wanted to report that one of his female co-workers was being sexually harassed in the workplace. And he said, Sherry, I feel really bad because she told me several months ago, but I wasn't quite sure I believed her. He goes, but after she shared with me a little bit about what this supervisor had done to her, I started noticing things more. Him with her and him with other ladies in our office. And that's why I'm here today, because now I believe there may be some truth to what she said. So he shared the information with me, and I asked him the who, what, where, when, why, and how. That's what we do in an investigation, because I knew that's where it was going to lead to. And so I initially brought in the person first that he had mentioned had told him what had happened to her, the person that he didn't initially believe. I brought her in first because I needed to hear her story. I know what she told him, but at this point it's what? Kind of hearsay. Yeah. So I bring her in. She comes into my office and she says, I'm not talking to you. I have nothing to say. And I said, well, let me tell you what I have heard. Can you at least confirm that this is a true, accurate statement, or is there some truth in it, or is it not true at all? So I explained to her what the gentleman had told me. She's stone-faced, said, I'm not talking to you. You're just going to have to make your case some other way. I'm not going to participate. I'm participating by being here is what she said. I didn't decline coming to see you, but I'm not going to tell you my story. I tried everything in the book that I have done over 20 years trying to get people to talk to me, try to make them as comfortable as possible. And granted, when it's sexual harassment or any kind of harassment, it's not easy to talk about, especially someone you don't know very well. And I've never met her before. And actually, she was fairly new to the city. too. So she wasn't really even comfortable with a lot of people here at the city at that point. And I felt sorry for her, but at the same time, I can't waterboard her. I can't make her talk to me. I can't put that big old light on her and say, you got to talk to me. I can't do that. So I didn't get anywhere with her. Probably that was the first time in my career I've never been able to get someone to talk to me. So I had to take that defeat and move forward and figure out, how am I going to make this case, or am I going to be able to make this case? Because really, truthfully, after, and I'm not going to tell you what he was doing, but it certainly was way unprofessional and shouldn't be happening in the workplace. No one deserves to be treated that way. So anyway, remember I told you the gentleman told me that he had seen possibly it happening to other ladies that he worked with. So I pulled them in one by one by one, and I got enough, and then actually I hit what I call the trifecta. I got someone who had actually physical proof from text messages of what he was doing and asking these ladies to do. Okay? That's the moment for HR, because you usually don't have that kind of evidence. And again, people don't want to talk to you. So, after confronting the person that sent the text, the supervisor, they had to admit it. I had it in front of me, right? I had the proof. And that person is no longer with us. Just because I wanted to still hear this lady's story, if she truly endured what she said that she did, I wanted her to at least maybe get that off of her shoulders. So I brought her back in and said, I've already made my case. Disciplinary action is in place, is getting ready to happen. But I'd still like you to tell me your story. The weight is not on your shoulders anymore, that this person's discipline is resting solely on your shoulders. I thought maybe that was why she didn't want to come forward. And she goes, no, Sherry, it's not that. She goes, but I do owe you this. She says, the reason why I didn't want to tell my story, and I still don't want to tell my story, is I am the breadwinner for my family. I am the only one working right now. So that means my bills, my house note, and the insurance for my children is all being taken care of by me. And I was not willing to jeopardize my job because he was my supervisor. I was not willing to jeopardize my job to lose all of that. So I was willing to endure that for as long as I needed to, until one, either I had found another job or I moved on to another position within the city, because that was my goal, is to get out. I'm like, well, I'm sorry that you felt that way, and you should still never, never feel like you have to endure something. I wish you would have come forward with your story. And she never did. But again, I think it was the same thing that was happening to some of the other ladies too. But I guess she sleeps at night, that she didn't feel like she was the cause of him losing his job. And that's why another reason why a lot of people don't come forward. They don't want to be the cause of the person getting disciplined or potentially losing their job. But just so that you know, not everything that comes to human resources ends up someone losing their job. We have what we call at-will employees, and we have what we call civil service protected employees. Do y'all know the difference? For example, I serve at will based on my classification. So my supervisor, Sylvia Guzman, who y'all may know, can come into my office at any time, or my director, Steve Vieira, can come in and say, Sherry, give me your badge and your keys. We no longer need your services. And don't have to give me any piece of paper or justification. Now, someone who is civil service protected, which is probably most of you in here and most of the city, there is a process. In other words, if there's some disciplinary action being taken upon you, and then when I mean disciplinary, there's 3 things that can go before the Civil Service Board. That's if you're being contemplated to be terminated, suspended, or demoted. Those 3 things. If those 3 things happen to you and you get a letter of what they call contemplated discipline, in other words, you know in advance what your supervisor or your director is considering based on something you did, whether performance-wise or conduct-wise. Then you have what we call a rebuttal meeting. And then that's where you have a talk with the supervisor or the director and explain your side of the story of why you did something or didn't do something or whatever you were being written up for. Then after the contemplated meeting within 24, 48 hours, then that supervisor or director makes the decision of what's going to happen to you. Are they going to uphold what they said they contemplated? Are they going to modify it? Or are they going to nullify it? In other words, make it go away. And I've seen all three. I've seen supervisors do all three of those things after talking to the employee. So, if you're always asking human resources, if you ever find yourself in that situation, which I hope you don't, but if you do, please, in your rebuttal meeting, always do it in writing and attend your rebuttal meeting. Some people get so mad that they won't even attend the rebuttal meeting. You just never know how it's going to turn out. Have that opportunity to have that conversation with your supervisory chain or the director. Maybe it will change the outcome, because I've seen it happen. Okay, let's move forward. Harassment. The city does not condone and will not tolerate harassment of any of its employees on the basis of race, color, religion, national origin, sexual orientation, age, citizenship, veteran status, disability, work-related injury or illness, or genetic information. Very similar to the discrimination policy, just a little less criteria. Okay. Harassment can include physical or verbal conduct, including jokes which belittle, denigrate, or intimidate on the basis of the above listed categories, or insulting remarks as well as graphic representations. Employees who experience harassment must report the violation to the department director or any assistant city manager or director of human resources, or to the city manager for investigation. Sexual harassment. The City of Corpus Christi's Human Resources Policy Manual defines sexual harassment as follows. Sexual harassment of employees by supervisors, co-workers, customers, visitors, or vendors, or other third parties will not be tolerated. I think y'all are the 29th class that I've taught thus far. And in actually the very first class that I had, I went to their work site. And they do get a lot of customers, visitors, and vendors. And a question that was posed to me, and it was a very good question, they go, well, they're not city employees, so what can you do if they're harassing us in our own workplace? So that's a fair question. I said, what we can do is this. It's our job, once you've made us aware that it's happening to you in the workplace, to try to stop that conduct, that behavior. I said, and you're right, they're not city employees, so I don't have any authority to technically investigate. I can't investigate the situation, but I can't recommend any discipline for them because they're not what? They're not city employees. But it doesn't prevent us from picking up the phone. If we find out that it is happening, it doesn't prevent us from picking up the phone and calling that company or their supervisor and saying, hey, your representative is harassing our employees, and that's unacceptable. Either you correct their conduct, have that conversation with them, or please don't send them back to our properties. So we do have a little bit of way to maybe curtail that happening to you in the workplace. And if it continues to happen, then we just take further measures. If that means getting CCPD involved, we can actually file criminal trespass on them so that they don't come back on city property. If you didn't know that we could do that. So yes, even though they may not be city employees, we might have some way to do that. Yes? No, federal, well, the language is taken from the federal law. So that's why the city's policies follow federal law. So that's language taken from federal law. So if you have other types of harassment happening to you in the workplace, it may be actually harassment. It might fall under another category. Could be that, yes. Okay. The City of Corpus Christi specifically prohibits the following behaviors. Unwelcome sexual advances, defined as any invitation, no matter how blatant or subtle, which is intended to result in coerced sexual intercourse, requests for sexual favors, and all other verbal or physical conduct of a sexually offensive nature. Unwelcome sexually explicit jokes, innuendos, making comments about a person's body, and other sexually oriented statements which include the use of derogatory and insulting terms related to an employee of the same or opposite sex, offensive calendars, magazines, or posters, suggestive or insulting sounds, leering, whistling, or obscene gestures. One thing I want to point out here is employees of the same or opposite sex. One thing that you may not know, when you hear of sexual harassment, a lot of people already assume it's a male and a female. However, that is not always the case. I'm working on a case right now where it's a male and a male in the workplace. And research tells us that males are the least likely to report any kind of harassment they're receiving in the workplace. Because, one, they may be ridiculed about it, teased about it in the workplace, or maybe people aren't going to believe them. Meaning basically because you're a male, you should just be able to deal with it. You shouldn't be dealing with it. That is unacceptable if it's happening to you in the workplace. Doesn't matter if you're a woman, man, doesn't matter. Okay? It should not be happening to you in the workplace. Like I mentioned, this is something I'm actually investigating right now, where there's some inappropriate touching going on in the workplace. Still in the middle of that case, so I don't know how it's going to end. But anyway, I asked this gentleman, he said, how long has this been going on? And he said, oh, it's been going on for about a year now. And I said, well, what made you come forward now? And he said, to be truthful, he goes, one of my coworkers went to one of your earlier classes, the one that you're taking now. I hadn't been to a class yet. And he told me that I need to report it, that it should not be happening to me in the workplace. And everything that I've done thus far trying to get this person to stop doing it has not stopped doing it. So I feel now I'm at that place where I need to come here. And he goes, it was hard for me to come here because I'm quite embarrassed to tell you my story, but I'm at my wit's end and I just need it to stop. And that's where we went from there. So again, he kind of solidified and verified that men don't really always come forward because of what he said. He was afraid of being ridiculed, being made fun of, that he had to come to Human Resources to get someone to help stop what he's been enduring in the workplace. Employees who experience sexual harassment should first tell the offender to stop the offensive behavior and report the violation to the department director or any assistant city manager, director of Human Resources, or to the city manager. Do you see the common theme here of who you report it to? Keep hearing those names over and over again. Here's what Human Resources is going to tell you. Yes, follow the policy. We always would rather you follow the policy. However, we do not want you not to report it if any of those titles intimidate you. And especially, maybe in a sexual harassment or harassment situation, you're probably going to have to talk to us about some very personal issues, which is already going to be uncomfortable. So if going to any of those folks and telling them your story is going to make you uncomfortable, go to someone in your supervisory chain that you trust that would keep it confidential. If you are that person, if you are the person that they come to, make sure you put it through your chain of command to where it eventually gets to Human Resources. Okay? So that responsibility now falls on you. But if that person feels most comfortable with you, just make sure you pass it to the right person. And of course, be confidential with it. Don't be sharing any information. Don't start any office rumors, people, okay? Okay, you ready for your first quiz? Let's see how well you've been listening. No? Oh, I bet you're going to ace it. Y'all are a good group. Y'all been listening very well. Ready? Is it sexual harassment if an employee complains to their supervisor that a coworker texted offensive photos to their personal device outside of work hours? The company does not need to investigate the claim. True or false? Just call it out.
False.
Good. See? Y'all are on. Companies can be held liable for their workers' conduct regardless of where and when the potential harassment occurred and regardless if it appeared on an employee's personal device. True or false? A single complaint of harassment doesn't warrant an investigation by Human Resources. True or false? Just call it out. False. HR will take every complaint seriously. HR shall conduct a thorough investigation by asking the complainant details about the incident or incidents, or may also be aware or witness the incident or incidents. Witnesses will be interviewed as well as the person who's alleged to have committed the offense. This is something that just happened to me last week. I've been out training, like I told you, for 2 months. I'm only in my office on Mondays and Fridays, or have been for the last 2 months. On one of my days that I'm in the office, I had a lady come visit me in my office that wanted to make an allegation against her supervisor. Okay? And she was saying she was being harassed at work. So she unloaded her information on me. I was taking notes. But at the end of our conversation, she goes, "But I don't want you to talk to her." I'm like, weren't you just in my class a week before this? And I don't have that liberty. I have to talk to the alleged offender. I have to give them an opportunity to tell their side of the story, absolutely. Otherwise, that's not a thorough investigation, right? So, and of course, any witnesses and things of that nature. In this situation, there were no witnesses, so it was just really the two ladies that I needed to interview and find out what's going on. So she's like, well, now I wish I wouldn't have come to Human Resources because now it's just going to make things worse. I said, well, and then we're going to move back to retaliation. I said, okay, by you coming forward, you've put a date and a time that you've come to report the issue. So if you have any adverse personnel actions happen to you from this point forward, it might send a red flag to us in Human Resources. Why is this person all of a sudden being written up? Or why all of a sudden is this person being considered to be terminated? I said, you did the right thing by coming forward, but I still have to talk to the person. So please keep in mind, when you do report things to Human Resources, to do a thorough investigation, we even have to interview the alleged offender. Okay? After all necessary interviews have been conducted, evidence gathered, a conclusion will be made to determine if a violation of policy has occurred. HR will make a recommendation as to what, if any, appropriate action should be taken based on the investigation findings, also taking into consideration any actions taken in same or similar situations. This is something that you may not know about our process. Human Resources does just that, makes recommendations. At the end of the day, the ultimate decision comes down to your director or ACM, depending on who's involved in the investigation or asked us to investigate it. We make a recommendation based on the findings and, as it mentions, same or similar situations. For example, if something that's happened in the workplace maybe hasn't happened specifically in your department, maybe it has happened in somebody else's department. And so the city would prefer that we remain consistent in our disciplinary practices. Why? To help us with liability in the event there's ever a lawsuit filed. This way we can say that we haven't treated employee A different and employee B different, right? That's the goal, is to treat everybody fairly and equally. So we give that recommendation based on some of that information, and then it's typically your director, or like I said, ACM, that makes that final decision on what will happen to that person, if anything. And again, they can do three things. They can uphold our recommendation, they can modify it, or they can nullify it. They can do nothing. That is their prerogative. One thing that I do want to share with you too is even if you are the person who brought the allegation forward, we cannot tell you what discipline that person received. Okay? That is confidential. Even if you're the person that brought it forward, I'm not at liberty to tell you what, if any, discipline was issued to the employee, the subject of the investigation. I'm not allowed to do that. Now, some of you may know we have open records. So that is an opportunity for you to request an open record to the city secretary's office if you want to get our investigation. And then the legal department will determine what, if anything, that you get out of that investigation report. They follow the law and redact things that are allowed by law. Moving forward, true or false? If an employee extends a friend request to his or her supervisor or coworker on social media and becomes uncomfortable with the other person becoming too familiar, the worker shouldn't report it to HR, true or false? Just call it out. False. Although an employee may have solicited and accepted the friendship, ultimately it's irrelevant. If the behavior is in violation of a company policy or the law, it's still the employer's responsibility to investigate it if reported, and or if the employer should have reasonably known such conduct is or was occurring. I want to tell you some case law here in a story regarding an employee and a supervisor being friends on Facebook. Most of us, how many of you actually have Facebook, just by a show of hands? Okay, hopefully you're being mindful of what you say on there, but in this situation, there was an employee who filed a lawsuit against her employer saying that they did nothing to prevent the sexual harassment that she was enduring in the workplace. Well, when the lawsuit's filed, of course, they're a little bit blindsided because this employee has never come forward. In other words, never went to their supervisor and reported it, never went to their human resources department and reported it, but apparently was talking about it on their Facebook page. And because they were friends with their supervisor on Facebook, the employee said, my supervisor should have reasonably known that I was being sexually harassed in the workplace because it was on my news feeds in my Facebook page. Now, here was the argument for the company. The company says, yes, we acknowledge that our supervisor was friends with this employee. However, this supervisor has assured us she never saw a thing on Facebook. As a matter of fact, she rarely goes on Facebook, and when she does, she doesn't go back to the specific employee's Facebook page and read everything that she's done or has been doing. Well, in this state where this case was heard, they found in judgment for the employee, saying the employer should have reasonably known because they were friends on Facebook. Exact same scenario in a different state, different court, they threw it out of court, saying that they couldn't prove beyond a reasonable doubt that that employer knew that this was happening in the workplace. So sometimes it depends what the judicial system does where you live. And this is why I read case law personally. It helps me with my decisions, especially here in Texas. I read a lot of Texas case law regarding employment laws because it helps me understand how the courts are reviewing things. Are they being pro-employee or are they being pro-employer? Kind of helps me with those decisions. Moving forward. True or false? HR may need to advise an individual of his or her physical contact with other employees or making them uncomfortable. True or false? True. Now, typically, your supervisor or director may do it without the assistance of HR, but in the event that they can't or are not comfortable, then we are required to step in. It says, while most employees would opt to tell the offender to stop the offensive behavior, they are not required, and that's underlined for a reason, and I'll give you that story here shortly, to tell the offender to stop. However, the behavior should be reported immediately so that thorough investigation can be conducted. An employee can be held accountable regardless if the complainant asks the offender to stop the behavior or the conduct. Why it's underlined not required is I'm going to tell you this story. And I thought of this story when we were making this slide. We had two employees who at one point of their career worked together. So they were familiar with one another. Okay? They had worked together for some period of time. Then one of them went on to another department, but worked in the same building. One day, female employee walks into the elevator, is getting ready to go down to the basement to do some business with another department. And the doors are closing on the elevator, and then this hand comes through like this. And you know what happens, right? Y'all work on elevators, or y'all are familiar with our elevators here, that if it sees or registers there's an obstruction there, it's going to open back up. So it does. And then he walks in. And he simply asks her, kind of an innocent question. He asks her, are you going up or are you going down? And she says, I'm going down. And then next his comment was, yeah, like my wife. See where that could be an innuendo? Okay, now they're in an enclosed space. He's riding down with her to the basement. Actually, he was going up, I understand, but anyway, he rode down with her. Could you see where she might have not been comfortable saying anything to him in that enclosed space at that time? Sure. She wasn't comfortable doing that, but she did the right thing. As soon as that she got off the elevator, hopefully he got out where he needed to go, she came back up and reported it to her supervisor. An investigation happened, and it was recommended he be terminated. What you don't know is there's a little bit of a backstory to this. This wasn't the first time that he had been warned about his conduct and his behavior. That's why we recommended termination in this situation. And so he was terminated for his behavior. Okay? So that's why I wanted to say they're not required. Because during his civil service board hearing, because he did try to get his job back, that was one thing that he kept saying was, she is required to tell me I offended her. No, our policy says they should, but they're not required. True or false? If an employee makes sexual jokes or innuendos in the workplace and no one involved in the conversation complains, the company bears no responsibility. False. If the conversation occurs in the workplace and the conduct is reported, a responsibility to investigate exists. Every employee is responsible for reporting any violation of company policy. Here's a true story for you. We have some folks that work out in the field, kind of like y'all do. It's not y'all's department, but for example, y'all are out and about in different locations. But this particular group had worked together for quite some time. They were very comfortable with each other, as we do. We get comfortable with our coworkers, right? We do, and sometimes we may overstep those boundaries because we feel comfortable with them. Well, that's what happened in this situation. There was a group of folks who worked together for some time. It would greet each other and talk to each other using racial slurs and derogatory terms. But because they were all of the same ethnicity, they thought it was okay. Nothing was ever reported until an opportunity comes up for someone in that group to promote. Someone gets promoted, others don't. So someone who didn't get promoted comes forward to the director and says, hey, I can't believe you would promote somebody that calls us blankety blank blank blank, and I'm not going to repeat the words because it was awful. Very derogatory and ethnic. And so now the director is blindsided and says, Sherry, I don't know what to do here. I don't know, should I rescind this promotion offer? Or I don't know what to do. And I said, well, who reported it? And he says, well, the person that also interviewed for the position but didn't get it. I said, okay. They might have something to gain. Were they the only person other than the person that got it? Yes. I said, okay, well, then obviously they have maybe something to gain. So I'm going to call in, if you don't mind, I'm going to call in everybody one by one from this crew, and let's find out if it's actually really being said and if it can be confirmed. So I did that. Well, not only did I find out it was the person that was promoted saying those terms, but also the person that reported it, also 2 other people in that group. So when I was done with that investigation, I told the director, I said, I think you've got 4 problems. Not just 1, 4. I said, not only is it the person you promoted, it's also the person that reported it and 2 other people in that group. They're all doing it. But all of them told me it doesn't offend them, except for the person that reported it. But yet he's engaging in the exact same conduct. So I told the director, here's my recommendation. They all violated the policy, so they all need to be written up. Now, whether you choose to rescind the offer on the person you promoted is up to you. But certainly they all need to be reprimanded, and that's what he chose to do. Okay? So be careful. I'm not saying don't have work relationships with your coworkers, but just be careful. Sometimes we get too comfortable, and at some point you may offend them. Or you don't know maybe things about their families or their lifestyle, and you say something wrong. So just be careful. Be mindful. Moving forward, it's everybody's job to stop harassment, bullying in the workplace, violence. Thank goodness that since I've started working for the city of Corsicana, I've never had to do an investigation regarding violence per se, like people hurting each other, or getting in physical fights or things of that nature. I hope I never do. But anyway, if you see something escalating to that point, which I actually have investigated that, where someone was worried that it could escalate to that because of their behaviors, then get us involved. Get your supervisors involved. Go through your chain of command. Okay. As like you heard, I work with the auditor's office. I also sometimes work with risk management, as probably you guys do too. For example, safety issues that they point out, they want you to fix them and things of that nature. Yes, I'm sure that's a never-ending list, right? Anyway, or we call you and poor Jerry said, can we borrow the vacuum cleaner? Where's Jerry? I want to pick on him. He's so sweet. For example, I'll say, just give it, I feel bad because he wants to do it for me. I'm like, I just want the vacuum cleaner. I'll do it myself. I'm not expecting you to do it for me. No, ma'am, you're not doing it. I'm doing it for you. He will not let me lift a finger. And I'm like, God, this is not right. This is just not right. But anyway, that's just his nature, and I've come to recognize that. God love him. Anyway, workplace safety. Now, you guys, considering what you work around, I know we have plumbers and electricians in here and carpenters and all kinds of folks in here. So you're working around machinery and things that are dangerous. Chemicals, yes. I made that mistake one time in my own household. Created a cloud that a little toxic. Anyway, read labels. I learned that real quick. Read the labels. Anyway, so there's going to be a video. Raymond Villarreal, I don't know if you know him. He's one of the risk management representatives. He's going to tell a little bit about what risk management does. I know you kind of already know. But he's going to tell you a little bit some of the services they do offer that you may not know that they do Jerry, you missed it. We were talking about you. In a nice way. Yes. Yeah, don't go telling my boss. I heard Sherry Eldridge was talking about me during the class. Anyway, here's Raymond.
Hello, my name is Raymond Villarreal. I'm a safety coordinator with the City of Corpus Christi's Risk Management Division. I'd like to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about the Risk Management Division and how we can work together to continue to have and maintain a safe and healthy work environment. The City of Corpus Christi's Risk Management Division is committed to providing our employees with the safest work environment possible. The risk management role is to provide an accident-free and comfortable work setting by eliminating recognized hazards from the workplace. One thing to remember is workplace hazards exist in all settings. So whether you work in the field or if you work in an office, the city's Risk Management Division has you covered. As a safety coordinator, our 4 main areas of responsibilities are: 1, we conduct injury investigations. In the event of an employee injury, a safety coordinator will work with the injured employee and the department to find out what happened in the effort to prevent similar incidents happening again in the future. 2, safety coordinators conduct driver education and worksite evaluations in an attempt to identify trends and behaviors that could potentially result in an incident. In addition, we can be contacted at any time to conduct a hazard analysis if an employee feels additional personal protective equipment is needed. 3, safety coordinators can provide you and your departments with a wide array of safety-based training. For example, we train employees in first aid and CPR, defensive driving, or we can go to your office and conduct an ergonomics evaluation. We also can provide department-specific training based on those departments' needs. And 4, the city's risk management conducts annual facility inspections. We look at general safety concerns such as tripping hazards, electrical safety, and fire safety, just to mention a few. To find out more about the City of Corpus Christi's Risk Management Department or to schedule any of our services, please call us at area code 361-826-3680. For the City of Corpus Christi's Risk Management Division, I'm Raymond Villarreal. And remember, think safe, be safe.
Okay. Have y'all ever done CPR as a group? Through risk years ago? Probably be good for y'all to probably do that training, right?
What about when you don't like that person?
Well, you saw what you got to practice on, right? You're not practicing on anybody. Yes, sir. You have? Well, considering y'all, the things that y'all work around, might be good. You might save one of your coworkers' lives. Anyway, it was just a thought. I was thinking maybe it was mandatory for you. I mean, we in HR haven't had one, and I think we should. I mean, you never know. All right, now I'm going to talk to you about maintaining our professionalism. This is where I get to be a little bit more lighthearted. It's not so much policy-driven. However, I do ask again that you keep your questions to the very end of the presentation so that we stay on time. Administrative Procedure HR 31.0 Professional Work Environment says this procedure is defined to define dress, personal appearance, and office guidelines in order to promote a positive professional work environment and to further enhance the reputation of the city employees and the work that the employees do in our community. Supervisors are responsible for interpreting and enforcing the dress and grooming standards in their areas of responsibility. This includes counseling employees whose appearance or personal hygiene is inappropriate and/or offensive. Employees that are not meeting departmental expectations of professional image may be directed by their supervisor to go home to correct their hygiene and appearance and/or attire. Compensatory time, personal leave, or vacation leave accruals, if available, will be charged for time away from work, and if no leave accruals are available to use, the employee will be docked the time away from work. Failure to comply with this procedure may also result in disciplinary action. Now we're going to talk about professional dress or professional appearance. Requires clothing and accessories to be neat, clean, pressed without tears or holes, and appropriate to the type of work, special assignments, or the locations that you encounter each day. Hygiene, not one of my favorite subjects. Why? Because it's personal. How many of you are supervisors in here? Raise your hand. Have y'all ever had to have a hygiene conversation with somebody? Was it easy? No, absolutely not. Why? Because it's personal. Let me tell you, if you ever get called to Sherry Eldridge's office and I start the conversation with, this is going to be just as hard for me to tell you as it's going to be for you to hear, you and I are getting personal, okay? Just letting you know up front. That is my way, and over the last 25 years has taught me, I'm letting the person in front of me know that I'm getting ready to have to tell you something that's uncomfortable. However, it is my job to do so. And so far, it's worked. I haven't been punched in the face. I haven't been cussed out or anything of that nature. So, anyway, but it's very personal. Because it is of a personal nature, just like as if you're doing discipline, you should always bring that person into an enclosed office. Do not talk about it in front of another employee. Okay? Bring them in. If you don't have a closed office, borrow one. Bring them in because it may lead to some additional information you may have not had before. For example, true story recently. Had a supervisor call me and say, Sherry, I have an uncomfortable situation. I don't know how to handle it. I have to talk to one of my coworkers about their bad breath. Okay, that is a difficult subject. I go, you can't just give them a mint and say, hopefully that works. Do a very subtle, it's probably not going to work. At least that's the line they were thinking about, doing that. I said, no, you're still going to have that conversation with them. I said, but feel free to use my tagline. I said, and then make sure you're doing it privately. I said, but you might want to use the word halitosis versus bad breath, because that's just a little bit more professional. I said, but be prepared for this. I said, after you tell them this, they may come forward with some type of mitigating circumstance. What I mean is there are sometimes medical reasons why people have halitosis. And you may not know that at this point. And they may end up sharing this information with you, which should be private, when you don't go and tell other people, HIPAA. I said, but if that is what happens after you tell this person that, call me and we'll work through it. We'll need to find out if there's something that we need to make an accommodation for. You know what I mean by accommodation? Okay. Supply them with mints. We'll have to figure something out. That's why I'm glad that I have not received that phone call, so I'm assuming that wasn't the mitigating circumstance. However, but it's never easy to talk to someone about their hygiene. But if you have to have that conversation, you need to have that conversation, because if it's causing an issue in the workplace, you need to address it, even if it's uncomfortable. Office environment employees will dress in a manner that is in keeping with acceptable standards of professional office attire. The following are unacceptable types of office clothing per HR 31.0. Here we go. Don't be shocked now. Athletic clothing, spandex garments, windsuits, sweatshirts, and sweatpants, unless it's job related or specifically designated. Probably not so much you folks, in the sense that you wear kind of uniforms, you wear your shirts, and you probably have to wear steel toe shoes, stuff that you work around. But we may have departments such as like Parks and Rec, who have events outside of normal business hours, like they do 5K runs or community events. And so if the weather is adverse, they may say it's okay to wear sweatpants or a sweatshirt or tennis shoes. Maybe not every day, obviously. This says no, but it would be appropriate for the event that they're having. And so that would be approved for that specific event. Halter tops, tank tops, strapless tops, spaghetti strap tops. I'm going to leave you with 2 words. Wardrobe malfunction. Know what I'm talking about? Super Bowl, Justin Timberlake, Janet Jackson. Remember that? Halter tops fall down, spaghetti straps snap. Here's something that we get asked in HR. Well, what if I wear a sweater, a cardigan, or a blazer, or a jacket over it? can I still wear that shirt? If you call human resources, what am I going to tell you? Or what are we going to tell you? It's unacceptable. Stop wearing it. It's unacceptable. Okay? However, remember the first slide? It said your supervisors are responsible for their areas. So, if your supervisor...
Right, to say, hey,
Yeah, supervisors should be telling you that if it's inappropriate according to HR 31.0. But in this situation, if your supervisor, you go to your supervisor and say, hey, I want to wear a halter top, but I will wear a professional jacket over it, it's their responsibility to tell you it's unacceptable. Okay? Moving forward, leggings, shorts, skirts, pants above mid-calf. Just with the list that I gave you just now. What do you probably see the most of in the city? Leggings. Okay, according to HR 31.0, they're not acceptable, right? It says unacceptable. However, I see them just like you do, obviously. Okay? Don't do this. I literally had a supervisor call me when we had that first cold snap and say, Sherry, I need some help discerning HR 31.0's take on leggings. And I said, well, there's really nothing to discern because 31.0 says they're not acceptable. Yeah, but some people wear them professionally, and so they look nice, and so I'm considering it as a supervisor letting some of my employees wear them. And I said, some? See, I'm listening. Investigators listen. I said, so what do you mean some? And then she corrected herself, and she goes, well, I said, no. Well, what? She says, well, I have an employee, and I'm just going to say employee A for this class. Employee A wears the leggings very nicely, very professionally. She wears the leggings and then the appropriate length shirt or dress and then the boots up to the knees. And so it looks really nice on her. And even myself, I wear leggings, and I think I look professional. But then I have another employee who, well, And I'm like, no, I don't know. I kind of knew where she was going with this, but I needed her to tell me. Because I can't assume, right? We don't assume. So I said, well, tell me what do you mean by that? And she goes, well, and there's this long, awkward pause because I'm sure she's thinking, how does she say this? And she goes, well, let's just put it this way. Employee, and again, I'm going to say B, employee B isn't as fit. Yeah, me too. Slap the head and shake the head, like, of course they can't see me doing that because we're on the phone, right? So I'm like, please tell me that you did not tell employee A they could wear it, but then you told employee B they couldn't wear it. Well, no, that's why I'm calling you. Yeah. Dodge the bullet there. I said, well, thank goodness you didn't do that. I said, because if you did, what could happen? Discrimination, absolutely. Don't ever put yourself in that situation. Do not tell employee A that they look nice and they can wear it, and employee B, you don't look so nice because you're not as fit and you can't wear it. Don't do it. Even if you're thinking it, don't say it, okay? In this situation, I said, here's what you need to discern. This is all you need to discern. Either you're going to allow them or you're not going to allow them. 31.0 backs you up and says it's unacceptable, so that's where I'd go. I said, but if you allow it, it's across the board. You don't get to pick and choose who gets to wear them. So just keep that in mind. Okay. So I could tell she really wasn't happy with it, but I'm saying, if it becomes an issue in your department, HR 31.0 is going to back you up. If you start making exceptions to that, there's nothing to back you up, and then you're on your own, technically. Right? So be careful, people. Flip-flops, slippers, plastic clogs like Croc shoes, water shoes, beach sandals, sports shoes, tennis shoes, basketball, walking, running shoes. True story. Had an employee call me not too long ago. Say, Sherry, my supervisor told me I need to go home and change my foot attire. It's not appropriate for the office. I said, okay. She goes, so do I need to go home? I said, well, you got a directive to go home by your supervisor, and they even told you why. That your footwear wasn't appropriate for the workplace. She says, yeah. So I need to go home? And I'm like, I would say, yes, you need to go home. She goes, but Sherry, they're Chuck Taylors. You know what okay, I'm getting ready to explain to you. If you don't, Chuck Taylors, and you need to know for this, and you need to know what they are so it makes sense to you. Chuck Taylors are an expensive version of Converse tennis shoes. You remember high tops, basketball shoes? Yeah, 1970s, 80s, very popular. Okay, I'm showing my age here. But anyway, so, yes. But All Stars, yes, absolutely. But it's the expensive version. So she says to me, she goes, but Sherry, they're Chuck Taylors. Now I know where she's going with this, right? You probably do too. And I said, okay. Again, HR 31.0 backs up your supervisor, says that basketball shoes are not appropriate for the office. So they've given you a directive to go home, told you that your footwear is not appropriate, and that you need to go home and change. So I need to go home? Ay, ay, ay. Oh, this conversation lasted way longer than it needed to. And I said, again, I'm just going to tell you, it's your choice what you want to do, but I would be more concerned with you not taking the directive, and then you're still going to be sent home to change. So I would go home and change and just get it over with. Okay, well, I guess I'll go home then. Yes, that was probably good. Anyway, but where she was going with that, I got it, is she was saying, because I paid a lot of money for these high-top tennis shoes, I should be allowed to wear them to work. No. HR 31.0 backed up her supervisor, right?
What about Casual Friday?
Casual Fridays also, they are not acceptable. However, I'm glad you brought that up, because that would be what I was going to talk about next, is when I started teaching this class, my director pulled me aside and said, hey, just so that you know, when you're out training, when you get to this portion that we're in now, that we may be making exceptions to that soon. This may be changing. They're talking about ways to make people more comfortable in the workplace, and one of them was wearing tennis shoes, and not necessarily just on Casual Friday, maybe every day. But it hasn't been implemented yet. But I am letting you know that that is a possibility, that that is coming, and some other additional changes to what you might be able to wear at work, okay? So until that, though, we're following HR 31.0. But yes, thanks for bringing that up. Although I do see it, that's another thing I want to bring up too, is you may see people wearing tennis shoes or things that are outside of HR 31.0, but there may be a mitigating circumstance, and I'll give you an example. In even our own department in Human Resources, we had a lady that was wearing tennis shoes with dresses and suits, and we're thinking, HR's not following their own rules, right? Some of us were saying that. Now, what I had the liberty of knowing is this, is that person had a medical condition that their doctor required them to wear orthopedic tennis shoes for a period of time. Now, I knew that because I have access to that information. That's my team, FMLA, that stuff. But I couldn't share that with anybody else in our department that was talking about it. Now, she told them that's one thing, but I'm not allowed to say anything. But I knew why she was wearing tennis shoes. They did not. They just thought she was being the rebel, the rule breaker. And that wasn't the situation.
She had like a bring a doctor's excuse.
She did. She actually had to bring that from her doctor, and that was part of her restrictions. So keep in mind that although you may see you think they're being a rebel or a rule breaker, there may be a reason why they're being allowed to wear something. So if you feel that they're not in compliance, maybe talk to your supervisor, because more than likely your supervisor will know the circumstance. Although they can't share it with you, they can just acknowledge it. Yes, I am aware of it. They can't tell you anything else. Also, too, I'm going to go there, flip-flops. I see a lot of that in the city. Do you? Just because you paid $80 for a pair of yellow box flip-flops, people, does not mean you can wear them to work. Men, if you don't know what yellow box flip-flops are, check your credit card statements. I guarantee you there's a pair on there. Okay?
What is this?
They may even be more than that. I'm probably being on the cheap side. Anyway, where I'm going with this is, though, no matter how much you paid for those yellow box flip-flops, those Chuck Taylors, they are not to be worn at work according to HR 31.0. Remember, clothing should not distract, be offensive, or reveal areas of the body such as the abdomen, chest, upper thighs, or buttock areas. Clothing should also not be tight-fitting or provocative. Skirt length should be appropriate. I wish I had a dime for every time I got a call that they want my opinion on if someone's dress or skirt is too short. I am not the steward. I am the steward of the policy. However, it is your supervisor in your respective area that determines that. But supervisors still call us wanting some guidelines. Now, we're not going to do like they do in school and come do the dollar bill test, where you make sure that it's the width from your knee, the dollar bill. They do that in school. We don't do it here at City Hall, and I'm not going to come do it. So, you should be able to know that what type of work that person does for us. But some of you, and most of you have been in here, and when I mean here, I mean City Hall. We have escalators and we have stairs, right? If your skirt is too short, I'm just going to tell you there's things I haven't wanted to see because someone's skirt was too short. So if you're ever here in City Hall and you see me on the escalator and I'm doing this, look in front of me. There's something I don't want to see, okay? Because someone's in violation. But people don't remember that. People forget about that when you're going up a flight of stairs or that escalator. True story, someone told me during one of my classes that I taught last month. Kind of funny, but not funny. Anyway, there was a lady, apparently her skirt was fairly short. One of her male co-workers, she was going up the escalator, and her male co-worker said, "Hey, so-and-so, pull down your skirt." Of course, he realized how that came out and couldn't come back from that and turned beet red, apparently walked off because he was like, how do I come back from that? He didn't mean for her to literally pull down her skirt. He was just kind of telling her, you need to put it down a little bit, but it just came out all wrong. And he goes, I will never do that again. So I still say you should tell somebody because they may not be aware of it, but be careful on how you say it or get someone else to do it. That's what most people can do. Oh, I'll get Sherry to do it. No, don't call me. Don't call me. Uniform employees. Employees who are required to wear uniforms will adhere to the uniform standards as set by their respective department, including any personal protection equipment issued to the employee. I'm sure y'all have to wear PPE, right? Hopefully you're doing it. Y'all should know better. Shouldn't have to tell you. Employees are expected to wear uniforms in an appropriate manner, such as shirts buttoned. In other words, we don't want to see any Fabio thing going on, people, okay? You know what I'm talking about. Shirts need to be tucked in the designated work pant, and sleeves should not be rolled up. Now, I will be honest with you. I don't see it. Y'all pretty much have, there's a couple of you that have long sleeves on, but most of you have on short sleeves. I've never had anyone written up, or I've never been asked to write someone up because your sleeves were rolled up or your shirts weren't tucked in. But I will tell you that is one of the biggest things that is important to our management is that the shirts be tucked in. They think it looks unprofessional if it's not. So please keep in mind that is covered under HR 31.0. They expect your shirts to be tucked in. If you have tails that are too short, you know that you can order longer shirt tails. Now, don't go back to your supervisor. I know he's here, but don't go back to your supervisor. Sherry Eldridge says you're going to order me shirts with longer tails. That's not what I said. I know they're available. So I don't know what your budget is for uniforms, and I don't know when you get to order those uniforms. But if and when that time comes, and that is a problem for you, ask about them and see if they are available in the type of shirt that you wear. We're going to talk about that. Yeah, we're going to get there. City uniforms should be clean and well maintained. Again, I know that you may go to work clean, but by type of work that you do, if you're like my husband who's a mechanic, I know some of you know that, he goes to work clean, but I guarantee you he doesn't come home clean. Matter of fact, he comes home filthy from head to toe, and I don't even do his laundry. He has to do his own laundry because it's just gross. Yeah. Gross. Yeah, not doing it. So, I'll do anything else but not his uniforms. They're just awful. Anyway, So obviously, I'm never going to be asked to probably write you up depending on the type of work that you do. It's kind of going to be obvious that you're going to get dirty during the day. Remember, departments may make changes to the uniform standard at any time for including but not limited to business necessities, safety, or environmental changes. Again, it's 90 degrees, 100 degrees here in South Texas, and you're going to roll up your sleeves. I get it. Okay? Casual Fridays. This is where we're going to talk about casual Fridays and more general attire. Okay? This is what 31.0 says. This isn't what Sherry says, but Sherry is a steward of 31.0. So if you call me, I'm going to stick with what this says because this has been approved by our executive management. It says business casual Fridays will be allowed unless specifically canceled by the city manager or his or her designee. The following are examples of acceptable casual business attire. Acceptable. Here we go. Men. Slacks, jeans appropriate for the office, collared shirt without a tie, collared knit shirt, golfer polo style, with or without a city or department logo. Women. Slacks, pants at mid-calf, skirt, jeans appropriate for the office, blouse, collared knit shirt, golfer polo style, with or without a city or department logo. Jeans. One of the things that I see the most on Fridays, they're not appropriate according to HR 31.0. The following are not appropriate for the casual business wear. Jeans with holes, tears, fading inner phrase, including ragged hems. True story. Personal story. Not too long ago, I had to go shopping for a pair of jeans. I don't like jeans. I don't wear a lot of jeans. So I had to go shopping for some for an event I was going to. Took my 10-year-old with me. Go to the area that has my size. I'm looking at the rack, and I literally see a pair of jeans that looks like a werewolf took their claws and went down the pants leg, shredded pants legs. $125. I said, are you kidding me? I've never paid $125 for a pair of jeans. I'm not going to start now. But you know what my 10-year-old says? Yeah, Mom, get those. Let's go to the dressing room and try those on. Let's go. Those are cool. Those are in. Let's get them. Now, granted, I'm an older mom, so she kind of wants me to dress younger. That's when I had that conversation with my 10-year-old saying, your mother's 51, not 21. Sorry, I'm not doing it. Let's go to Goodwill. You want to scare your 10-year-old? Tell them you're going to go to Goodwill. Actually, we did go to Goodwill. So, anyway. But where am I going with that? Just because you may have paid $125 for that ripped up pair of jeans does not mean that you can wear them to work. Moving forward. Jeans of a low rise or hip hugger style. Pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to give you my 2 words again. Wardrobe malfunction. You're squatting down, you're bending over. The sun's going to shine, if you know what I mean. We don't want to see that. Well, maybe some of us don't want to see that. But anyway, most of us don't want to see that. Okay? Now, this is one of my favorites. Jeans that include any kind of wording or other than the label, sparkles or rhinestones. Okay, people, if you have bling on your jeans, where is it normally located? On your back pockets, right? So what are you drawing attention to? Your back side, your sunny side, right? Yeah, that's why we shouldn't wear them. But 31.0 says not to wear them. Or wording. True story in one of my classes. When I brought up pink, because I've seen some shorts and things that say pink across them, but I had a guy actually stand up in one of my classes and say, yeah, I've seen the ones that say juicy. I'm like, really? I didn't even know there was such a thing, and that's kind of scary that you would know that. But anyway.
What about belts that are flamboyant?
It's not on HR 31.0, but it would be up to your supervisor to determine that. Because I've seen some of those blinged out belts that have not so wonderful things written on them too. I'll just leave it at that. But yes, a lot of bling. So now you're wearing your bling jeans with your yellow box flip-flops, okay? And like being blinded. It brings attention to areas that could get you into what? Sexual harassment, because you're staring at someone's backside. I know you can't help it because of the wording or the bling on the jeans, but be careful. It's not acceptable according to HR 31.0. So remember, not all casual clothing is appropriate for the office. Keep in mind that your attire must continue to be consistent with the professional business image of the city. Now we're going to talk about jewelry and tattoos. I'll take the lesser of two evils right now. We're going to talk about jewelry. It says facial jewelry worn on the face, nose, eyebrows, eyelids, lips, tongue, etc. will not be worn by employees while on duty. Earrings worn in the earlobes are acceptable so long as they meet the expectations of a professional image and do not present a safety hazard given the nature of the employee's job. I'm going to take it a step further. No, I'm not looking for tattoos. I'm looking at jewelry, actually. Because, for example, I told you my husband's a mechanic, right? When we, well, I'm going to say engaged, I asked him to marry me, and he said yes. And when he said yes, he goes, but don't go spend a lot of money on a wedding ring for me because I'm not hardly ever going to wear it. And I said, yay, bonus. I am marrying the right guy. He's giving me permission to go cheap on the wedding ring, unlike I did the first time. Anyway, so he says because, as a mechanic, he's had to cut way too many wedding rings off of his coworkers because they hit their hands with hammers, smash it, get zapped, and now their hands are swelling and the circulation's getting cut off to that finger, and so they cut them off. He goes, so I don't want you to spend a lot of money because I'm actually not going to wear it at work. Are you okay with that? And I said, yeah, I'm okay with that. And he goes, well, I'm glad you understand that because my first two wives didn't. I'm like, yeah, I'm the third contestant. So anyway, yeah, I am. I'm the third contestant. So I said, yeah, no big issue. He goes, and they even wanted me to wear it around my neck. And I said, well, that's probably even worse because you're leaning over working on a car engine and it's going to get caught on something. Next thing you know, you're being strangled to death. I said, no, I perfectly understand it. So now the joke between us is this, and it actually happened this past weekend. I can tell you, we have a 10-year-old. So we rarely get to go out on dates unless she's spending the night at someone else's house because we don't have any family here. So when she goes to sleepovers, we go out on a date. And he actually goes out of his way and gets that ring, dusts it off, and puts it on his finger. And I'll joke with him. I go, oh, we're married this weekend. Yay. You're presenting that you're married. So it never gets old. It's kind of funny. But literally, he doesn't wear it very often. But just keep that in mind. Like I said, some of you are wearing your rings and bracelets, and I'm sure that you know you've been doing this work long enough to that how it might present a safety hazard. So just be cognizant of that and be aware of that. Tattoos, not one of my favorite subjects because we can sit here all day long and argue this point. I personally don't have tattoos. My husband has tattoos. I know a lot of people who have tattoos. I don't care really one way or the other about tattoos. I've seen some beautiful works of art. Before I came to work for the state of Corpus Christi, I worked in law enforcement. And we had a lot of officers that had some beautiful works of art. And as a matter of fact, when they'd get new tattoos, they'd come to HR and say, hey, come check out my new tattoo. Very proud of them. And I get it. But this is what the city says and what's been approved by our management. It says tattoos in general should be covered with clothing, makeup, or a bandage. However, depending on the location of the tattoo, the department director may use their discretion and will evaluate the appropriateness and appearance of an employee's tattoos based on the position that he or she holds, their public contact, the department standards, and as long as they meet expectations of a professional image. This isn't Sherry's rule. This isn't HR's rule. This is HR 31.0 that has been approved by our executive team regarding tattoos, okay? Remember, department directors may establish additional appearance guidelines suitable for their work environment, job function, activity. True story. I had a supervisor not too long ago call me and say this, Sherry, I have someone in my department that wears a man bun and I don't think it's appropriate for our department. So is there something in HR 31.0 that tells me that he can't wear the man bun? I said, no, there's nothing about hair specifically. It just says you need to be groomed and professional. He said, but it says department directors may establish additional appearance guidelines suitable for their work environment. So, yes, you can add that on there. I said, but I'm going to throw you a curveball. I said, do you have ladies that work in your office? Which I know he did. And he said, yes. I said, do you allow them to wear buns? Yes. I said, so what makes it different for her to wear a bun and him not to wear a bun? And then there was that silence. And I said, so really what you need to come to the conclusion of is, are you going to allow everybody to wear a bun or nobody wear a bun? Because other than that, if you say that he can't and they can, the ladies can, what are you going to get in trouble with? Possibly. Gender discrimination. Okay? So you do it one, you do it for all. Make sense? That's not always the case, but in this situation, it could lead to a gender discrimination suit. That they can wear it, the ladies can wear it, but the man cannot. So be careful of that. If you're not sure how to handle those situations, I'm glad the supervisor called me to give him guidance on that. But if you're ever unsure, or those of you that are supervisors, call HR and we'll tell you. Ready for your final quiz? Get out of here? Okay. Here we go. Which one of these is not appropriate attire in the office? Now I'm going to put 5 pictures up, 1 through 5 from left to right. And I know it's because they're so far up there, it might be harder to see. Normally I have the screen like right here and it's more up close. All of the above. Let's just kind of go through them fairly quickly. Number 1, what do you see maybe wrong with that?
She's pretty.
She's pretty. Now, okay, I'm going to go there because you did. I'm going to tell you, I've had people in my class, some of my classes go, nothing's wrong with that. Absolutely nothing's wrong with that. I had one of my classes go, her hair, and I'm like, okay. Anyway, but yes, she's dressed a little provocatively. It's a little tight, maybe. That top button looks pretty stressed to me right now. What a wardrobe malfunction there. Could happen, right? What about number 2?
Short dress.
Remember the escalator and stair story. Might be a little short. Might see the sunny side that you don't want to see. Somebody said her shoes, although you can't really see her shoes. I know where they were going with that, and I'm not going to repeat it. But anyway, what about the middle one?
He's a punk.
I didn't go that far. I said he kind of reminds me of someone who's a wannabe rap star, maybe. But
That's not professional what he's doing. No.
but you can actually,
And a hat.
but you can see. You can see that he has what? One side tucked in, so you know he can actually tuck in his shirt. One side is not. And the hat. Now, Jerry's wearing a hat. And most people I know, departments tell me that they require it to be forward facing. Unless I heard someone, they do allow them to wear them backwards if they're wearing a hard hat. Yeah. So I understand that there's a proper way of wearing them. I certainly don't think that would be appropriate in the workplace unless you're a rap star. In this case, I don't think we hire any rap stars. Well, not their day job anyway. I'll just leave it at that. The 4th one. It's hard to see, and I'll just kind of tell you, he's got on tennis shoes, his shirt's not tucked in, his sleeves are rolled up, and his shirt is very wrinkled. Like he kind of woke up at the last minute and said, oh crap, I need to be at work. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, they'll be talking about people if they're in this room. You realize I'm in human resources, right? No. Okay, what about the last one? They're actually in athletic spandex wear. So unless we have yoga class during work hours, I don't think that would be appropriate. Although it would be kind of nice having yoga. Anyway. Which one of these is not professional in appearance in accordance with HR 31.0? Let's go through them. Number 1. According to HR 31, can he have all those things? No. What if he was willing to take out all that stuff and cover up his tattoos? Might as well be a mummy and cover up the whole thing. My guess is this, is that if they went to that extreme to alter their appearance, I don't really think they'd probably be willing to remove a lot of those things. Or cover up their... Okay, and if you tell me that her hair offends you, I'm going to scream, because I've had some people in my class, I've had 3 people in 3 different classes tell me her hair bothers them. Now, the first 2 that asked me that, I asked them, I said, hey, so what is it? Maybe I'm missing something about her hair. What is it? And they couldn't give me an argument. The third person, when I asked them, what is it about her hair? And this is what he actually said. He said, her hair offends me because she's trying to be Princess Leia and she's no Princess Leia. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what our society has come to, that we're comparing people to Star Wars characters? I'm not kidding you. It actually was said in one of my classes. But what you can't see probably here is that she has 3 rings in her lips and then in her nose. So according to HR 31.0, she would not be able to wear the lip rings or the nose ring. Now, if she would be willing to take those out, is that okay per 31.0? Yeah, if she would be willing to do so. Okay? Now, the third one, tongue bars. I got arguments on this in some of my classes. I have met people that have tongue bars that when I talk to them, I wouldn't know that they had one until I saw it. On the flip side of that, I have seen people with them that haven't mastered talking with them. So if I had to talk to them over the phone, like customer service situation, it would be a little frustrating. But according to HR 31.0, you're not allowed to wear them while on duty. The argument I got was, well, they make clear ones, right? I'm like, it's not about if it's silver, gold, diamond studded, or clear. It says HR 31.0 says you will not wear it while on duty. And the last one is going to throw you for a curveball. Yes.
On the timing, so,
Yes.
because HR 31 is about appearance.
Right.
Timing is, I guess,
No. HR 31 says they're not to be worn at work. There's no gray area there. Not while you're on duty. Now, what you do outside of work is a whole different story. So I'm assuming that our powers that be have determined that it's not a professional look for the office. Now, outside of the city, now I have worked for companies where that is not an issue depending on what you do, your position, what kind of public contact that you have, that kind of thing. Now, the last one, you can't really see it, so let me describe it to you. Obviously, you can see, though, that he is wearing a button-down shirt, dress shirt with a tie, right? So that's okay. But what you really can't see very well is he has gauges in his ears, and he also has tattoos on his chin and above his eyebrows. I'm going to take it a little step further. This is where you can't see it. But what if those tattoos that he has on his face are religious tattoos? Is religion protected? Yes, it is. So, this employee, if he were an employee of the city, he could say this. He could say, I am asking for a religious, reasonable accommodation to display my tattoos, because if I cover up my tattoos, that's like denouncing my religion. So I am asking to have a reasonable accommodation to display my tattoos while at work. Would we have to consider it? Yes, we would. Now, the burden actually would be on the employee, however, to provide us documentation of several things. Being, one, that you're an active member in whatever religion you're saying that these religious tattoos are a part of. Also, two, that if you were to cover it up, what would be the consequences be to your religion? Those are the things that really human resources should be involved in, not you as a supervisor. If you have someone coming to you asking you for a reasonable accommodation in something, pass it up through your chain of command, okay? If you are the employee who's going to be requesting, and same thing with facial hair and clothing. Just, I guess about 2 weeks ago, like I told you, I like to read case law. There's quite a bit of things moving forward in employment law regarding facial hair in the workplace and clothing in the workplace. For example, one of the things that I read is there's some religions about wearing beards. It's part of their religion. And they are working for a company that says they have to be clean shaven. So that's going through the courts right now. I haven't seen which way that they're going yet because it hasn't concluded yet. Same thing with...
Working at chemicals or cover up a mask.
Right, like if you have to wear a respirator or something like that, you're right, exactly. So that's what I'm saying. I'm gonna be curious to see how it fares out in the courts, because I don't know specifically what they do, because that obviously is probably an EPA thing.
Yes. Depends on the
And it's going to depend on what's going to trump what. You know what I mean by that is which law is going to be reviewed more, I guess, acceptable in this situation versus this person's religious rights. Yes. Okay. So, anyway, going back to this gentleman, if he asked for that, we would ask for some additional information and then determine if it was a reasonable accommodation. Okay? And then based on what is determined, then they may or may not be able to display that tattoo or something else. For example, one of the things that I read is there was a lady who was terminated for not abiding by the new company uniform policy. Prior to this uniform policy that they put in place, she was already an employee and they were allowed to wear anything, skirts, pants, dresses, whatever. But now the company decided they wanted a uniform look, and so they were going to have to wear pants and a shirt, kind of like y'all wear with the logo on it, a polo or golf style shirt with the logo on it. And her religion, they aren't allowed to wear pants. So she told her employer, I can't wear the pants, but I am willing to wear a skirt of the same color that the pants are, and I'm still willing to wear the shirt that you're providing me, but I have to be able to wear a skirt. They still fired her. So that's in the courts right now because of her she asked for a reasonable religious accommodation to wear a skirt because her religion doesn't allow her to wear pants. Still waiting to see how that fares out. I can't imagine what the company's argument's going to be. I mean, if they allowed them to wear skirts before, I can't imagine it being a safety hazard or something of that nature, but it'll be interesting to see what happens. You had a question? Absolutely. If that were his argument, we would have to take that into consideration, sure. Yep. Really would. And again, the burden of proof is going to be on that person asking for it. You're going to need to bring us the documentation to tell us why. If we're asking you to cover something up or take something out in that respect, but it's in regards to your religion, some of them have merit. Not all of them do. Okay?
Would that be something that would be discussed?
It does happen in the interview process. For example, let's say that number one came and interviewed with you. According to HR 31.0, it backs you up, right, that they need to remove it, right? So right now you have, before they're an actual employee, you say, we have a procedure, not a policy, a procedure in place called HR 30. And if you want to have it there, it's always good to maybe have it there. You're going to be asked to remove those things. Would you be willing to do that? Just so that I'd rather do it up front than after the fact. Because now it's after the fact and now it maybe becomes discriminatory. I guess it still could be considered discriminatory in the applicant process, but you're showing them in advance that you have something in place that says that they're not allowed to be worn at work, right? Right.
Say it's a religious.
Right. And you may get that. If you ever get in that situation where someone is saying it's a violation of their civil rights, if it's a violation of their religion or something of that nature, have that conversation with human resources. Just be diligent in listening to the person, taking as much notes as that you can. And then if it's something that you can't answer for them right then and there, then just tell them you'll have to get back with them after you've consulted with HR. And sometimes even HR will have to consult with legal because we don't see everything either. So we'll want to ask our legal system, our legal folks, hey, have we come across this? And if so, how have we addressed it? So we just want to make sure that kind of we're all on the same page. Same thing with like when we're talking about making exceptions to HR 31.0. If you're a supervisor and you are going to go and make exceptions to HR 31.0, make sure you have your director's blessing. Because what happens is now you've got 3 different supervisors under the same director all doing 3 different things. And then it causes a ruckus between the employees. Well, so-and-so in their division, they can wear them, but how come we can't? I have that going on right now. Because they deviated from HR 31.0. This is why HR would recommend you don't deviate from HR 31.0 because it backs you up. But if you decide to do that, please, supervisors, make sure you are on the same page as your director because ultimately they're going to get that question posed to them. Well, how come they can and we can't? Okay? So the answer was all of the above, according to HR 31.0. However, you have learned today that that may not be in the sense if someone asks for a reasonable accommodation. That's why I wanted to tell you about that. Now, I'm going to give you two new additional resources that you didn't have before to report violations of policy. Okay? You can do it through a hotline phone number, 361-826-8355 or 826-TELL. It's an automated system. It records your information, and then it sends it to our email. When I say our email, it sends it to my email and Sylvia Guzman, who's my supervisor. We're the only two that get it. It'll be a digitally recorded message from you, and you can do one of several things. You can leave me your name and your contact information, and I'll contact you to get the information that we're going to need from you for what you're reporting. Or, as like Sarah told you, you can also remain anonymous. But remember, I told you if you remain anonymous, it makes it a little bit more difficult sometimes for us to investigate, especially if you don't give us the who, what, where, when, why, and how. And we don't have now a resource to call you back because it's not going to display your phone number for me to call you back to get additional information if I need it. Again, what I'm not saying is this. I don't want you to say I'm not going to report it because I have to identify myself. If you are more comfortable being anonymous, then report it that way. But just remember, give us as much detail as you can so that we can do a thorough investigation. Otherwise, I may not be able to. Another way that you can report it is through email to hrhotline@cctexas.com. If you want to take a picture of that or write it down, you're welcome to do that. Just so that you know, if you're sending it by email, do not use your city email address if it has your name in it, because then you can't remain anonymous. So send it from an email address that does not have your name in it if you want to remain anonymous. Now, I'm a certified trained investigator, so I'm going to use whatever resources I need to get what I need to do a thorough investigation. So if you're sending it via email, whatever email that you give me, I'm still going to be able to use. So in case I do get stuck, if you decide to remain anonymous, that's okay. I'm still not going to know who I'm talking to, but I'm still going to be resourceful and say, you sent us an allegation of this, this, and this. I've done this. I need more information. And then you can respond back to me. You're not required to give me your name, even at that point, but I'm going to be resourceful and use that email address if I need to, if I'm stuck or I need additional information. Okay? Also, too, like Sarah mentioned, if you want to follow up with your investigation, or not investigation, your allegation or your complaint, leave us a password. For example, let's say you call in an allegation of a potential harassment that's going on in the workplace. Give us the who, what, when, where, why, and how, the details, and then say my password is, I'll make up one, banana. My password is banana. So when we put it on paper, we're going to have on this file, the password is banana, so that when you call in and say my password is banana, I'm going to pull banana file and say, okay, this is where we are. As you heard me mention earlier too, this is another thing, just keep in mind that if even though you're the person that reported it, we investigate it, I'm not going to be at liberty to tell you what, if any, discipline happened to that employee. Now, for some, it may be obvious. If you don't see that person in the workplace anymore, something might tell you they got terminated. Or you don't see them for a few days. Could mean what? They got suspended. And in some cases, you may see nothing happen. And this is where I used to hear from, well, HR doesn't do anything. I'm not at liberty to tell you what happened. Not everything leads to a suspension. Not everything leads to a termination. Even though maybe your perception is what they did somebody should be terminated for, doesn't mean that we were always able to prove our case or that there was enough evidence. Maybe we still did something, but not to the extreme that you thought it should be. But it is what we can prove. Keep that in mind. So this is why we want witnesses, Video, I love video. We have video cameras in a lot of our locations, which helps me in some of my investigations. Witnesses, I can't tell you, this is why we want you to come forward. If something is happening in the workplace that shouldn't be happening, witnesses are our best line of defense when we have to defend it, whether it be in civil service, unemployment, or in a lawsuit. Okay? I thank you for your time. Thank you so much.